do I have a motion to open tonight's meeting?
Motion to open.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Finance Committee. It's Wednesday, February 24th, 2021. Tonight's meeting will be videoed live, and there'll be audio meeting aired on Comcast Local Channel 18 for all the viewers out there. On tonight's agenda, we're going to start our FY 2022 budget hearings. Tonight, we're going to have the Park and Recreation Department, Board of Health, Council on Aging, and Library.
No, he's talking to her.
So I think we'll start in order. We have the
Mr.
Park and
Chairman?
excuse me?
Can you hear me? It's John.
Yeah, we can hear. I can hear you, John.
Okay, because thank you.
Okay, ready?
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to start tonight with Park and Recreation, Mr. Chad Leclerc. So the floor is yours. Well, I think what I'd like you to do is go over the line items in your budget that demonstrate increases and explain the increases for us.
Good evening. Well, for my park budget, I didn't ask for any increases or decreases this year. Within the last year, obviously it's been a strange year for us with when we need workers at the park and when we don't. We hired somebody in March, and I think a week and a half into their first paycheck, we shut down. So I didn't find any real reason to ask for anything additional because I have really no means to go by it from the last 12 months. Julie and Melissa and myself, we've just kind of discussed a little bit about maybe payroll increase because of minimum wage and so forth. But I think at this time, I'm just going to hold off and try to manage that for this year and see how it goes, and maybe revisit it next year when things are back to normal.
Okay. Sounds good. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Leclerc?
Great job, Chad.
Thank you.
Yeah, obviously, we're hoping everybody can come in with a very lean budget and, as close to level funded as possible. And you definitely did that. So we appreciate that. And thank you. If we have any questions regarding your budget, we'll be in touch with you
Okay.
before we actually take a vote on it.
Okay, awesome.
But thanks for participating, and look forward to working with you going forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda will be the Board of Health and Soil Board, Mr. Joe Correa, the health agent, and Mr. Robert Medeiros. I don't think Robert is here tonight.
No, I'm here on behalf of Mr. Medeiros too. Feeling unwell tonight.
Okay.
As a soil board, as one of the soil board inspectors, I'll just go over the budget. So from my stand, good evening to all. The Board of Health has voted to level fund our budget, except for any potential contractual obligations in the salary. Other than that, everything maintains exactly the same. From a Board of Health standpoint, we probably should be asking for a little bit more money considering what's gone on in this past year with COVID and our nursing contract, but we've been lucky enough to reach out and get grants from different public health organizations to keep us in check, and we hope to continue down that road coming into fiscal year 22. So again, the Board of Health has voted to level fund the Board of Health budget. And from the Soil Board budget, it's exactly the same too. It's limited amount of money, and they do a little bit of work in town, especially these days. So we're able to keep it all under wraps.
Thank you. That's great. Greatly appreciated. Makes life a lot easier when we have budgets like that. We know it's not always going to work out that way, but we definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question as far as the level funding. We've been through probably one of the greatest events in modern history as far as, concerning public health. And it seems to me that we should be looking at, turning the budget upside down to see where we're meeting the needs of the present needs of the people of this community. We say want to dovetail or, with grants and so forth, but is that really adequate? We cannot at this point, and I'm saying, I want to address thing with the school and with and with the other agencies, as far as there's been a sit down with all the town administrators, and concerned with say public health, with the fire chief, council of aging, and saying, hey, what do we need in order to, on a local level, to address some of the public health needs of this community. Whether we need, I don't want to make any suggestions as far as a solution. The solution should come from the people, but just talking about level funding, business as usual, and I hope we don't hear the same thing from the schools. But we have a large number of our citizenry who really need some town services, and it means their whole well-being in life. So I'm just tossing that out about business as usual. I question that, and level funding, not just turn. This is a time to just turn the whole town budget upside down. This is not a time for, as I said before, business as usual. So I'll just, I just want to make known my comments on this very, very crucial matter.
Okay, thanks, John. Anybody else want to add to that?
Well, I guess I would say to John, what kind of, you're saying there are a lot of people in town who need services. Well, who are they? How many of them are there? What kind of services do they need? You're talking in very general terms. And based on very general terms, I'm not prepared to turn the budget upside down.
I think that's a town, that's the administrators that are involved. We're talking with one right now. That comes from administration. It does not come from, say, a board such as ours. So I think that I'm just tossing it out that some attempt should have been made, as far as my estimation, to say, look what we've got, what do we need in order to meet the some of the needs right now.
Well, John, my question to you is, what needs aren't we meeting?
Yes, that answers it.
Mr.
I
Chairman.
mean,
if
I know this has been a challenging year, and with regards to COVID, we're so lucky that we have a fire chief and EMS director like Mr. Kevin Gallagher, who has stepped up and organized a tremendous effort to help get people tested. And I know he's probably working on, getting vaccinations rolled out as soon as possible for residents. So I think we need to let this play out. But in the meantime, we have to be fiscally conservative, because we know there are going to be some bigger budgets that there are going to be increases with.
I might make one comment. Yes, we're working very hard on the vaccine and on getting the vaccine to town. We were ready to open up probably this week and start vaccinating, or at least order our first round of vaccine. And the state pulled the rug out from underneath us. That being said, today I was invited to a Zoom meeting with Senator Montigny, where we walked through our needs of our community and the reason why we should get this, we should be able to have the vaccine and be open. Chief Gallagher did a spot, it was on the news at 5 o'clock, in regards to how we are prepared and ready to go. Now, from a money standpoint, simply put, the vaccine in our community for our residents is covered by FEMA 100%. So we can set up and do. The only costs that we might have issues with is some overtime, some administrative costs, which have always been built into my budget. We always keep a little bit there just in case of these kinds of emergencies. Maybe this one's a little more extreme, but you can double check with Julie on this, but I'm pretty sure all of that expense will be covered by FEMA when we get this thing up and running. So we always do take a look at where we're at, what we're dealing with, what kind of money we can get. We belong to several organizations, health organizations that allows us to reach out for different grants. And you're right, there is some talk, there would be at some particular point in time, some talk to really discuss, a Board of Health budget, because it always is very tiny and there's a lot more that we could do to Mr. Hallcroft's comments. But, at this moment, we've been managing with what we have.
I'll add into, I think when we're done going through the departments tonight, I have that kind of budget summary that you guys should all have as part of your booklets. And if we want to go through that, I think it'd be helpful to see, it kind of gives an overall picture of what we're looking at right now. And, we do have, even with departments being asked to level fund, we do have a significant increase in fixed costs. And in certain departments, like I'll mention DPW, where there are increases that they desperately need for next year. So I understand your concern, John, and I think right now, while we aren't certain about what next year will look like, we're trying to make sure that we manage it and stay within the budget and the constraints that we have right now. But I think everyone is looking at, the future, and when we're in FY22 and we have a better idea of what's, the economic situation is going to be, I think we've set ourselves up well to be able to look at everything and build better budgets going forward. And I'll just add into, Joe had already mentioned this, but in terms of the pandemic this year, we have been very lucky to get a lot of money from FEMA. The state with the CARES Act, we've gotten a lot of money through CARES. I know Joe personally, he's gotten a lot of grants through the Board of Health as well. Heather has gotten a bunch. I mean, we've been able to get a lot of additional funding that we wouldn't normally have to cover some of those unexpected costs this year as well. So I understand your point, and we're definitely looking at it, but right now, where we're not certain what next year will bring for revenues, we're trying to stay as conservative as we can.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Mr. Correa, for presenting your budget. And if we have any additional questions for you, we'll definitely be in touch. We won't be voting on the budget tonight, but we will later on this year in a few weeks. And if we have any questions, we'll reach out to you. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Correa.
So,
Okay, next budget hearing is from the Council on Aging with Miss Heather Sylvia, who is the Director of the Council of Aging.
Hi, good evening. To Mr. Howcroft's point, I think that the Council on Aging budget is something eventually we need to look at. I know last year we had started that conversation about adding an outreach worker, but we didn't feel that FY22 budget that was feasible or fair to even pursue that. That's why we're pretty much level funded. And I think that's more for future discussions. The only increase I asked for was in the part-time salaries, and that was more housekeeping. When we did our FY21 budget, we didn't incorporate the increase in minimum wage. And then there will be another increase this coming January. So that was why it's a little under $1,000. So, and it's really just housekeeping, and it's just to it's not a raise. It's just to accommodate the increase in minimum wage. You guys are making this easy this year.
Does anyone have any questions for Heather?
The question, Heather, I have is the, I know you're very active in helping people get the vaccine. And you've been working diligently on that. Also, in this vaccine type of issue, especially, with elderly, shut in, there's been a lot, so I don't know if you're looking at your budget to see, whether it's going to be adequate in post-vaccine?
I think for FY22, I don't think it would be it would be fair to even consider an increase. My team, we truly live that team Acushnet spirit. So we've been innovative. We've kind of changed direction in the way we've shifted our purpose. We've been very involved in testing, the vaccine rollout, which I think will still happen. So that we've kind of, now that we're close to the public, even though we have outdoor programming. So we just shifted our focus so that we are important and we're still helping the community. So to answer your question, I think we're okay for FY22. I think later on we'll have different conversations, but for this year, I think level funding, except for that one housekeeping item, is more than fair for us.
Thank you.
Heather, with this pandemic, are they serving meals still
We are.
inside? They're still serving the meals?
No, not inside. Everyone on March 5th,
Oh,
17th,
delivered?
everyone delivered. We were delivering about 73 meals a week. Once the COVID started, that bumped up to about 160. And it's leveled off a little bit. So meals are still going out. The only programs that we have indoors are a support group. We have a toenail care and a dental hygienist because it's not feasible to have those programs outside. But
How do they deliver the meals? How do they deliver the meals?
they have volunteer drivers through Coastline Elderly Services. So we have in-house staff that temps it and gets it ready and packages it, and then volunteers deliver it.
Very good, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Heather, I got a quick question for you. I'm just curious. The Council on Aging, did that finish the required upgrades to become a shelter?
No. The bathroom is about 80% done. The shower is in. They just gotta have to come back and do the plumbing, and the toilet's not in yet.
Okay, so the
I know-
generator and other stuff is.
Oh yeah, the
functional.
generator, that was one of the first things we did.
Right, okay,
And the security cameras have gone in, which wasn't technically a requirement for a shelter, but for safety purposes, we felt it was a wise investment.
sure. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. St. Jean, did you have a question?
No, not yet.
No? Okay.
Very
Uh,
happy with-
Heather, do you anticipate any additional like capital expenditures with regards to maintenance of the building?
No, I think I'm in good shape. My roof is only about 12 years old. We did a lot of upgrades during the pandemic. The town meeting had appropriated that money. So I think, no, I don't see anything. I think transportation wise, I'm going to be looking at vans within the next couple of years. And that's normally done through a grant with the state where we're responsible for 20% of the purchase price. But other than that, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Mike or Gavin,
Yeah.
do you want to be known as today?
Yeah.
Sorry, one question. Heather, are you aware of any residents who haven't received meals because we don't have enough supply, or are we, there's no wait list for meals?
Oh,
or
for
anything
Meals on
like
Wheels,
that?
no. And actually, they waived a lot of the requirements. Normally, you would have to be considered homebound, where you were only going out for doctor's appointments. They've even kind of leveled off on that, where basically, if you just feel that you're food insecure or you're just afraid to go out, and as long as you're over the age of 60, you're qualifying at this point.
Okay,
As long as everybody's getting food, as long as we're technically still in the pandemic, they will get a meal.
perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions for Heather?
If I can just add in, the two ladies who are here, Heather and Dina, I'll speak prematurely for Dina too. I want to commend them both for such a great job. You know, Heather, you worded it really well, that you've changed your focus for how you've delivered services this year. And both these two departments have done such a great job this year managing the pandemic. I know Heather has the outdoor pergola area, and they've had, I mean, very far into the winter, you had services that were outside, where it was shocking to me. And I just want to commend them for doing so much that's outside of the scope or the box that they normally would have had. And, you know, with the vaccines and helping people get appointments right now, and hopefully in the future, if we're able to do the vaccine clinics ourselves, what a great job Heather and your staff have put forward throughout this. So I did just want to mention that.
I had 80-year-olds doing Zumba New Year's Eve day. It was pretty cool. It was too cold for me, but they were out there. And just so you know, we did take January and February off. And kudos to Mr. Merritt and his team. They've done so much for us. They built the pavilion, they put the heaters in. So we will be resuming outdoor activities 5 days a week, March 1st. So we're back, sort of.
Good, that's good.
Amazing.
All right, if nobody has any other questions for Heather, thank you for presenting your budget tonight. If we have any questions, we'll reach out to you
Okay.
in the next few weeks. But thank you for presenting your budget.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, Heather.
Okay, next hearing is the library. We have Miss Dina Brasseur, the director.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Normally when we meet, I give you a handout when we're meeting in person. And since I can't do that today, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to share my screen if that's possible, just so I
Sure.
can review things with you that way. Thank you. Hopefully this works. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. We'll load it so that it's in presentation mode and off we go. Okay, thank you. On behalf of the library's Board of Trustees who aren't on the call tonight, I'm pleased to present our FY22 budget request with some supporting information. It's basically level funded. It's a 0.3% increase over FY21, and that equals $921. It meets our state requirement, which I'll discuss a little bit more in a minute. And as you know, this proposed budget doesn't have any COLAs for any of the staff. And you'll receive that if and when that gets updated. So our increases primarily are to the longevity line. We have 10 positions at the library. 8 of these positions are 19 hours a week or less. We have a dedicated staff, and I think the longevity shows that 6 of our employees will receive longevity in FY22, which means they've been with the town for 5 or more years. 2 of those employees will hit their 10-year anniversaries in FY22, which is exciting. So we do have an increase to that. We are members of the Sales Library Network, and as you know from past presentations, we do have a contractual 2% annual increase with sales. So that's reflected in the sales expenses line this year. And there is also a bandwidth increase in that line this year. All of our computers are on the sales line, and our bandwidth is about half of what is recommended for a library that serves a population the size of Acushnet. So with this upgrade, we will be fully at the recommended level by the American Library Association for bandwidth. And also, in FY21, when we made cuts, we did make a significant cut to our other supplies line, and it's my hope that we can build that back up a little bit each year as we move forward. So that covers the increases. Like I said, this budget does meet our state requirement, which I think you're all aware of, but maybe not. So I'll just quickly say we do have, through the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, a municipal appropriation requirement, which means that each fiscal year our budget needs to be increased at a minimum by a predetermined formula. We take the average of the last 3 years' appropriations and increase that by 2.5% to get our figure. And we need to do this in order to remain certified and to receive state aid. State aid is absolutely critical, and maybe more now than ever before. Another state requirement is that we spend 16% of our total appropriated budget on material for direct patron use. And the other supplies line only gets us about halfway there. So we need to make up the difference, and that happens primarily through state aid. So like I said, it's critical that we receive it. This is the formula provided by the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. And as you can see, our municipal appropriation requirement for FY22 is $278,132. Our request is $278,760. So just about $600 difference. That's the closest we've been in the 6 years I've been at the library. It's a little close, but as long as it's higher, I guess that's all that matters. And not that I expect that any of you will remember this a year from now, but I do just want to note that looking ahead to FY23, because we've had, when we look at FY23 and we look at FY20, 21, and 22, all of those budgets will have been at right around the same amount. That's going to bump our MAR up for next fiscal year to 285,000. So we'll be having different conversations also next year about what we can do to meet that mark next year. And as I do every year with you all, I do just want to give you a quick update on library services, especially so that you know what we've been doing, particularly this past year, because we've also shifted our focus a bit too. Our last day of what we call normal service, which is patrons browsing in the building, selecting materials, checking them out, attending programs in our building, that was already March 14th of last year, which seems impossible. We began working remotely primarily at the end of March, and that was through mid-May. During that time, I worked on a reopening plan with our Board of Trustees and with support from the Board of Health and the town administration, who have been wildly supportive to us this year. We began a library takeout program in June, and that's primarily what we've been doing since June of last year. We have a window in our community room that lines up nicely with our deck ramp, and Mr. Merritt from the building department made us some trays, and we stick a tray out the window and off we go. We also in October began computer use by appointment, and that's been very well received, so people can come into our building if they need to use the computer. And you know, right now, when we can return to that quote unquote normal service is of course a huge unknown, though I am hopeful that we will be able to reopen for browsing in the early spring, and we'll see, but my fingers are crossed. We've served over 4,700 people at the window since June. Through January, we've circulated just under 24,000 items. We've also distributed over 1,300 take and make kits, which are craft kits for families primarily. We were doing that weekly in the summer, and we've been doing it monthly since. And this past month, we just did our first teen and adults craft kit, and that was really well received. So I imagine we will be doing that on a regular basis now. Essentially in the kits, we just give you all the supplies to do the project at home, and it's gone over really well. We also offer printing, photocopying, faxing at the window. That's all been for free since June, just to make it easy on the staff at first, but it's turned out to be a really nice courtesy to those people who need prints and photocopying and faxing. And there's still a lot of faxing going on in this world, believe it or not. So we see quite a few people a week for that. We also offer personalized book bundles. So if you aren't sure what you want and you can't get in the library to look around, we will be your eyes for you, and we'll pick out items for you. That's gone really well. We've handed out almost 100 tax forms in the past few weeks. So people are actively coming to the window for things other than material. And finally, we do have other services available. Like I mentioned, we do the computer use by appointment. Our home delivery program has continued since June. Our Wi-Fi is on 24/7, and people do come to the parking lot and sit there for a while to get the Wi-Fi. So we're happy to offer that. And our digital resources, the usage on that has increased tremendously in the past year. Hoopla is one of our platforms. We've had a 20% increase there. Overdrive and Libby are our two most popular. Well, it's the same platform, but two different ways to get to it. We've seen a 65% increase there. We've increased our spending with both of these services to meet the demand. We've just gotten a subscription to something called Creative Bug, which offers thousands of craft videos for people to follow along with, and that's been well received. We've got through a state grant, a reading challenge software called Beanstack. We've just started working with the Acushnet PTO last week to do something in collaboration with them for Acushnet public school students. Readers are logging their minutes through that software, and Acushnet readers have already read 38,000 minutes this year, so that's pretty cool. And finally, our statewide databases are also fully available and 24/7. So we've got a lot going on. We're so proud to serve the town, and we've been able to, we know it's not the same for people, but the staff and I have worked really hard to make it the best that we can during this time. And we know that people are appreciative, and we look so forward to having them back in the building as soon as we can. And that's what I've got for you today.
Well, thank you, Dina. That was a great informative presentation and, great job on continuing to provide, services to our residents during the pandemic. So, kudos to you on
Thank
that.
you.
If we have any questions before we vote on your budget, we'll reach out.
Okay,
But for now, everything looks pretty good and we thank you.
great. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Dina,
Thank you.
before Dina goes, I just want to reiterate again, the creativity and effort from you and your staff. I mean, all the stuff you just saw on those slides, it's amazing. The stuff that you've come out with when other services have been shut down, you've just created new ones. So we're just so proud to have you and your staff as part of our staff. We're so grateful to have you guys. You guys have done such a tremendous job. And I think it shows from all this stuff that you've just listed here and more. I'm sure there's plenty more on the horizon for you guys. So great job.
Thank you, Julie. We appreciate you also.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dina.
It is, when they say Team Acushnet, they're not kidding. It's been really great. It's a good group of people to have been working through a pandemic with, that's for sure. So
Where are you getting the money for those craft supplies? I mean, just.
primarily from our friends group. I mean, we have a lot of supplies that we've just accumulated through the years anyway, but our friends group has supported us 100% this year with anything we've asked for. So it's not coming from our appropriated funds. It's coming primarily from the friends. We've also gotten some donations from residents, who maybe kids have outgrown certain craft things and they have a supply, so they've given those to us as well.
Well, I'll be dropping by some supplies then, because my daughter's outgrown them. If you can use them,
Excellent. Excellent. Our windows open 36 hours a week, so please stop by. We're there Monday through Thursday till 7 p.m. and we're there on Saturdays 10 to 2. So please drop them off. We'd love to have them.
Will do.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Dina.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, Julie, do you want to go over the overview of the budget?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to, I think it's helpful. We did this for the selectmen last meeting. And you guys should all have them with you. I can share it on the screen too if it helps.
This is awesome, Julie. This is awesome.
Okay, good. Well, and it's slightly updated from the one that the selectmen had because from that point, we did hear back from Old Colony. Their budget subcommittee made some changes and it was like $57,000 decrease for the assessment. So the numbers are a little bit slightly changed, but overall, this at least tells you the snapshot of what we're looking at right now. Because I know when you guys get your books, there's so many pages and it's hard to kind of pinpoint the things to look at. Let me just see if I can share my screen. I'm gonna do this right. Let me see if I can do this. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the packet that you guys have. I'll go to, there we go. Can you see all that? Because my box is kind of in the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good, you guys. All right. So the first page kind of goes through the FY22 revenue projections. And when Melissa and I went through and updated this, we looked at, we wanted to kind of compare to what we had budgeted for last year versus what the recap actually had, because there were a lot of changes that came when we did the tax rate recap. And then the last column obviously is the update, the FY22 projection for right now. The biggest changes for between the FY21 budgeted and the recap, we all know the state aid. Originally for 21, we had projected a 5% cut, and the state level funded us for FY21 so far. So that was a huge bonus. For FY22, we're still keeping the 5% cut right now because we really don't have any figures to go off of. The governor put in his request and it's level funded, but we don't have anything yet from the House or the Senate Ways and Means committees. So For now, we're keeping the 5% cut in there and working around that. And if anything changes as the budget progresses, then we're starting off more conservative. And if we get that money back, then we add more, and we're in a good spot. So the local receipts, we've level funded to FY21. We only increased the water fees because water obviously has to cover their own budget. The next section kind of shows you all the tax levy. And the biggest change between what we budgeted for last year and the recap was the new growth and the overlay. We planned on $250,000 in new growth last year and ended up with $734,000. And so that obviously, that was a much bigger difference that led to our levy being higher than we had originally projected. For this year, these were the numbers that came in from the assessor. We start with the levy that set the 2.5% increase is there. The new growth of 200,000 is the projection from the assessors. We have the debt exclusion plugged in, which is the police station and the school debt. The overlay is given to us by the assessors. That's their projection for this year. And the solar revenue to capital expense fund. This is the estimated amount from the assessors for the total solar revenue that would go to the capital expense fund for FY22. And then for transfers, we started out last year with 917,000, and right now it's dropping to about 577,000. And the big difference there is just we haven't plugged in any free cash yet to balance the budget. As of this budget that I gave you, let me look ahead. We're about $88,000 in a deficit as the budget and the revenue stands right now. So we would have to add $88,000 of free cash to balance the budget, but you can see that our transfers are still significantly less than they were in the previous year. And I know that this is something that we've been striving for since I came here. My first year here, we were using about $1.2 million of free cash to balance the budget. And so every year as we've been working to make our budget the best it can be, we've also been working to decrease that free cash dependence. And that's been a challenge. I know you guys have all worked really hard on getting that accomplished too. So I think this kind of goes to show how well we've done with it.
Question?
Yep.
Last year, we got, correct me if I'm wrong, we got 3 times as much money from new growth than what was anticipated, correct?
Correct.
And why is it now even lower, 200,000? No, with that amount of money last year, why is it reduced even to 200,000? Is there something going on as far as building permits not being issued or not being requested? Is there some type of methodology that would, when you get 3 times as much money last year as what they projected, do you want to repeat that same type of scenario?
So I think this is a great question to ask the assessors when they come in. But I will say for last year, we had a lot of solar, like the biggest piece of that increase was related to commercial and personal property. So there were, big increases for, say, PJ Keating, I know had some work. There was a change in the valuation for all of the utilities. And again, Kelly can explain it a lot better than I can, but the state changed the way that the values were determined for the utility companies, and it led to a very large increase in new growth. And I think that's being challenged right now by probably all of the utilities because it was a huge amount for them. I want to say it's about $250,000 worth of that increase. And then the other big portion of the increase was due to all of the solar farms that came on last year. So the assessors have to provide that. That's their role in determining the revenue for the budget. And, I know Melissa talked to Kelly a bunch on this too, and that was their best guess. Last year was very out of the norm, and they still need to come up with a conservative number because we wouldn't want to overestimate our revenue and not reach it and have a revenue deficit for the year. So I think it's a great question. I think Kelly can probably give you more specifics when she comes on. But we go through this with the assessor every year, and ultimately that's their determination for the numbers we put in for new growth, overlay, and the solar revenue.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions for this page? So the next page goes through the FY22 expenditure requests as of yesterday. This was the update. And this is showing you the pre-COVID number for FY21. Melissa and I felt like it was important to show that number because obviously we were on a different path last year. And then when COVID hit, we had to make cuts. Most departments cut their budgets by 10%. Of the expenses. And so I think this is kind of good to see where we were for last year compared to where we are projected for FY22. And for a lot of these groupings, the number for FY22 is still less than it was for FY21. So if you look across, it shows your general government projection is a little over 1.7 million. Public safety is at 3.8. Education is at a little over 17 million, and that's for the Acushnet Public School and the Old Colony. Public Works and Water is a little over 4 million for FY22. Human Services, 574,000. Culture and Recreation is at 363,000. The debt service is about 500,000, and our benefits and insurance are at 3.6 million. So our total current budget for FY22 is $31,699,593. And I'll get into a little bit more of the expenses on the next pages. So to give you a little bit of a recap here for the revenue, again, we're currently projecting a 5% decrease in the state aid. When we have a better idea of what that's looking like for the House Ways and Means and Senate Ways and Means, we can update that as needed. Our estimated local receipts are level funded from last year, and under the budget draft as proposed right now, approximately 88,000 of free cash would need to be used to balance the budget. On the expense side, that $31 million that I showed you on the previous slide, that does not include any COLAs for non-union employees and for the collective bargaining employees who don't have a contract yet for FY22. So the only union that has a contract for next year is the Fire and EMS union. Theirs was off by 1 year from everyone else, so they have their contract set for next year. But the police, the DPW, and the Town Hall Clerical Union, they all don't have contracts yet for next year. So those numbers were all level funded. On this proposal, we still don't have an update for the Acushnet Public Schools, so their budget is currently level funded. Departments have been asked to level fund expenses, which most were cut by 10% for last year. There are some that have specific increases, and I'll get to that on the next slide. And then the fixed costs are currently accounting for about $455,000 in increases, and I have that on a following slide too. So I think this is important to kind of know as we're going through things. Right now we're at, $88,000 short, but once we get the numbers from the school and plug in the COLAs, obviously that number will increase. So these were some of the bigger significant departmental increases that were projected. Obviously, you heard tonight even a few that had a couple $100 here or there. So we looked at some of the bigger ones that I think are worth focusing on, and I'm sure when you go through these departments, you'll be able to hear from them specifically on why they need these increases. So assessors have a $7,800 increase in their management consulting and software expense. The treasurer collector added about $21,000 for a part-time payroll administrator position. Conservation has a $3,500 increase in their stormwater MS4 permit line item. The police have about $33,000 increase in their cruiser or their vehicle line item. Last year, they typically do two cruisers a year. Last year, we cut back to one to meet the budget. And this year they're looking to add back and do two again. So that increases about 33,000. For the building department, their total increase between these two line items is 13,000. So we got a new online permitting software, and we were able to purchase that through a grant. But there is an annual cost for the subscription, and the iPads that we would need to use when Jim goes to do an inspection for a house. He has the iPad so that he can update everything right then and there with pictures, and it's really beneficent for them to get everything online and to have everything streamlined through this permitting software. And going forward, we're going to look to try to incorporate the other departments so that everyone will be able to use this online software. The annual subscription is $12,000. So forestry, we talked about them a lot last year too. They increased by $5,000 because of the needs that were kind of put on hold in the past. There are a lot of trees that need to come down. DPW, they have a bunch of increases here. Overtime increased by 15,000. Police detail increased by 10,000. Gasoline expense increased by $20,000, and road materials expense increased by $110,000. In CMAS, they're increasing the incinerator CMAS expense by $95,000 and increasing their equipment rental by $73,000. And then under the miscellaneous category, we've added a line item for the Lake Street Improvement Committee. We had a reserve fund transfer at one of our previous meetings to add money to the budget because they've kind of regrouped this year, and they've been working on a lot. So this will help cover costs for their secretary that does the meeting minutes for them. So in total, these kind of bigger increases are accounting for about $408,000 in increases over last year. The next slide I have, this lays out the fixed costs for this year, which account for about $455,000 of increase over last year. The biggest one is the first one here, Old Colony, their tuition assessment. It was originally, I think, $323,000. And again, with the budget subcommittee meeting and making some adjustments, we were lowered to $265,000 increase over last year. For pensions, we have Bristol County Retirement and Medicare that have both increased about $124,000 overall. And then insurance. So we lucked out where our health insurance came back with a 0% increase in the premium from last year. I know we talked about this at one of the last meetings where our numbers have been really good, but over the last few months, we've had some really, really high numbers. And when they came back and looked at it, they obviously didn't weigh too much into that and gave us a 0% increase. So we're really grateful for that. That's a huge cost. The line item is about 1.5 million. So any increase you have on there could be really significant. So putting a zero in there is really great. We did have like a slight increase based on the actual number of people who have the insurance for this year, but it's very minimal. And then for workers' comp, fire, police, liability insurance, we don't have a solid final figure yet, but we've been told to plug in a 15% increase as an estimate. So that would come to about $66,000. Obviously, when we get a final number for that, we'll be able to plug it in and hopefully that would lower. But these three categories here are taking up $455,000 of increases from last year. So that's a very big increase for us. This just gives you some of our current fund balances. I know this is relevant for a lot of people. The free cash, we don't have it certified yet for FY21, but based on our estimates for what we're submitting to the DOR, our certification for July 1st should be about 1.9 million. This is higher, obviously, than in other years, but it's kind of like a fake high number because we're typically around $1 million to 1.2 million in free cash. And last year, well, the next line says we used some money for town meeting, but there was about $340,000 that we did not use in our fall town meeting. And we also received about $200,000 from CARES in June. And that helped kind of push this number higher than it normally would be. So it's higher, but it's not, there's a reason why it's higher. And it's nothing that we should expect to see as like a future trend. So the 1.9 gets reduced by about $250,000 because that is what we spent at town meeting. So that would leave us with about 1.683 for town meeting for this May. Stabilization, our current balance with interest right now puts us at about $3,082,000. The OPEB trust is at $414,000, and I know you all know we didn't get to fund any OPEB last year. I think that should really be a priority. If we're able to put anything aside for that, it would be very helpful. The capital expense trust is at about $50,000, and the special ed reserve is at $200,000. They didn't have to spend any of that money last year. So these are some good reserves. When I first came to Acushnet, our stabilization was at, I think, 1.6 million. So I think it's amazing all of this money we've been able to put aside. It's really bumped up our reserves. FY22 budget goals. So I kind of reiterate here what our revenue and expense and deficit looks like. And obviously, once we get some of these figures, the COLAs and the Acushnet Public Schools, those will be the bigger numbers that will really impact what our deficit looks like. The goals that we have, we talked about this earlier, maintain level service in town operations. We're in the economic recession. We don't know what the future is going to look like. Our biggest goal is to keep at least a level service in town operations. And if we're able to go above and beyond and improve, obviously we want to do that too. The second goal is to retain healthy free cash and stabilization levels as a safety net. Again, I think we did a great job last year of, plugging in that 5% decrease, and ultimately that's going to boost us for the end of this year, because that $410,000 is extra money that we're going to have that'll be certified free cash at the end of this year. And again, if anything were to change, if we needed that money, it's available for us. And I think the same thing will go for next year. Use little to no one-time revenue to balance the budget. And this would be like free cash. We talked about it earlier that we want to try to decrease or eliminate our use of free cash to balance the budget. Continue funding all important capital projects. When we have articles, that'll be, articles are due on Friday. So when we gather all the articles together, we're really pushing, again, as we did in the previous two town meetings, to look at the most important capital projects. We don't want to put things aside that would be a detriment to the town in the future, but we also don't want to just go looking at wish lists and kind of going crazy buying things either. With whatever extra money we have, we want to use it wisely. So fund all of our approved collective bargaining agreements within town departments, and continue funding OPEB obligations. And then the last page I have here, it just goes through our calendar, like a rough draft of like a calendar that we have. Town meeting will be on May 10th, which is a Monday. It's the second Monday in May. It will be at 7 o'clock, which is our typical time. I know the selectmen looked at maybe putting it to 6 o'clock, but they decided to keep things as it has been in the past. So our articles are due this Friday, and then that gives us time basically all through March for the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to review the articles and budgets. We're also going to pull the bylaw review committee together, because there will be a good amount of bylaw articles that are going to be coming up. So I'd really like to get that bylaw review committee together to review everything and be able to give recommendations to the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. I have April 6th as the date that the Board of Selectmen can approve the final warrant. And that gives about 2 weeks, April 7th to the 21st, for the Finance Committee to provide recommendations on the final warrant articles. April 23rd is the last day for us to post the warrant. and then May 10th will be the town meeting. So it's all gonna come up quicker than we'd like, I'm sure, but there it is for you. So at least you have that.
Thanks, Julie. That's a great overview of, what we're expecting here. And I'd say it's one of the best overviews we've had, as far as making it, easier for us, to do our job and what we have to do going forward. So, kudos to you and Mel, doing a great job.
Thank you.
Hey, Julie,
Anybody have any questions for Julie?
sorry.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Julie, I'm just wondering, how are we looking on the snow budget?
That's a good question. I'm not sure at the moment.
Okay. All right.
We're not in a deficit yet, but I feel like we're gonna get up to it soon.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mel, if you have that figure.
I'm sorry,
Brian?
the what budget?
Snow?
Oh, no, because honestly, in the past 2 warrants, we've had a lot of snow bills coming in. I can actually, if you guys keep talking, I can pull that up for you in like 2 minutes.
Thanks, Mel.
Yeah, I think we're all done getting snow anyway, so
I would love
Oh,
that.
don't say
would be
that
great.
out loud, Mike.
Mike.
I said I haven't put my snow blower away yet, so it's usually when I do that, then we get another snowstorm, so.
My daughter just got new boots and gloves, so she's ready.
Hey, Julie, quick question. For those budgets that we don't have like COLA adjustments in there, do we have a sense on what the increase would be for like 0.5%, a 1%, a 1.5, just to kind of, even if you've got like what a 1% increase would be for those missing budgets?
We can do that. We can do that. I do know that the budget, the collective bargaining agreements that are in play for next year, the fire EMS has a 2% increase, and all of the school contracts were negotiated at a 2% increase as well.
Okay.
So you'll see that in those budgets, but I can find out, like Melissa and I can do out like a, this is what a 1% would be, this is what a 1.5%, so you can at least see that.
Yeah, even if you just do a 0.5%, we can multiply from there. Just and total rough sketch.
Yeah.
I did have another question. One of the things that I was thinking about, remember when Old Colony was presenting, and the superintendent said that because of the way the math works now with regards to state aid, they said, you have 85 less kids, therefore the town can afford more towards schools. And the 85 kids, it sounded like to me, but maybe I misunderstood, so I might need to just be corrected here. But it sounded like we were saying those 85 kids were the homeschooled kids. So those kids that were at, I think it's TECA or something, or, that program. Are we not paying for those kids that have opted to be full remote?
So the students that are not in TECA, that are completely homeschooled, we aren't paying for, and the money that would come from Chapter 70 for those students, we're not getting as well. So like we lose money from having that. I'm just looking to pull up because I got an email back today from Dr. Bailey about this. So I had asked her about, the cut and if she had any information about where that difference was.
Yep.
So in her quick analysis, she said we're actually 96 students lower than last school year. Due to COVID, they had an increase of 44 students who left traditional school and are now homeschooled. Here's the breakdown. So she says, this is the difference in enrollment this year by grade. Kindergarten is -1. First grade is -45 students. Second grade is +4. Third grade is +8. Fourth grade is -35. Fifth grade is +6. Sixth grade is +18. Seventh is -3, and 8 is -4. She has private parochial -7. She said this number is included within the grade level numbers though, and homeschool is -44. So that's what they have. I mean, the biggest ones are first grade, fourth grade, and that accounts for 80 students, those 2 grades there.
So these are kids that with homeschooling, but not part of TECA, so the parents decided to pay on their own?
So
Is
the
that-
40, so she said that the 44 that went to homeschool, they were pulled out of our schools completely. And so now our school system is not getting money for them from Chapter 70. The parents who are homeschooling would actually get funding from the state for
From the state.
homeschooling. And then the rest of the students who left, I mean, I don't have the info, that's all she gave me, but I mean, typically you see it when people leave town, like if a family moves out or, you know, moves in, that's where you see the numbers, but typically they're not 88, you know, it could be like around the 10 total range where some, you know, people move in and out. But it seems interesting that there are like whole classes that have lost, like the whole first grade is down by 40 students. That's a lot, especially where we had added extra classrooms. I know for first graders, I think it was preschool, kindergarten, and first. So it's actually kind of interesting to think that 40-ish students left first grade.
That's 2 classes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's all the info I have right now. The school is looking into it, but it's a big issue. And I know we've talked to some of our state reps about it, and they're working to see if anything can be done as well, because I do think it's somewhat a made up number. I think when we have these students that come back next year, and even losing, I don't know, like say 30 students total, say there were 30 students who actually left town, that doesn't necessarily mean that there are classrooms that we could reduce if they're all spread out throughout the different grades. So it's like an artificial number for them to say we have 250,000 extra, but we're working on it as much as possible, see if there could be any change that's made.
Just to go back to the snow, right now, out of the 110, we still have about 29,000 left, but also keep in mind, there's quite a big chunk of invoices in this next warrant, at least a few $1,000s, but even if at worst case, it brings us to 25, if he is right and there's no more snow, we're golden.
The sanding that gets us.
Yeah, the salt and sand.
That's actually in this warrant, and that's a few $1,000s more.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
Thank you.
so Julie, when do you think the school will be able to at least give us some preliminary numbers, would they be able to give us preliminary numbers even if it's before their date to present?
Yeah, so I got an email about this from Kristen this week too. She said that they're meeting with their budget subcommittee this afternoon, which was Tuesday, and again on March 3rd. They should have a set budget number by the 3rd. March 10th is their public hearing on the school budget. And she anticipates that they'll vote on the budget that night. So they'll be ready to meet with the FinCom and Board of Selectmen after the meeting on the 10th, because that'll be their final budget. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I didn't get to include it. Actually, do you guys have this? There should be a pie chart.
Yep.
Okay, because Melissa was working on that this week too, so we could add it in there. I don't have it up on my screen, but that kind of gives you a nice overview of the totals that we had plugged in, and sometimes it's easier to see in percentages where everybody falls in. So there's that too, and I'll be getting this stuff up on the website. So if people at home want to see it, we'll have it for them to view too.
Great.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns for Julie? All right, if there aren't any, does anybody have any old business to discuss? All right, no old business. Anyone have new business to discuss? Okay.
Easy group.
What was that?
Easy group.
Yes. We do have some minutes to approve from January 27th, 2021. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at those? And if we're good, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to
So moved.
approve. Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Okay, none opposed. Okay, I think last on the agenda for tonight is discussion of our next meeting, which it looks like it's set up for next Wednesday, March 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. Kathy, do you know who we're supposed to be meeting with next week?
Yeah, so far I have the Board of Assessors and Conservation. I was waiting to hear back from planning.
Okay. Yeah, I think we could do all three for sure. That shouldn't be a problem at all. Okay, if there's no other business tonight,
Motion
I
to
have a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see everybody next week. Have a good week.
Guys,
Stay
Go
healthy.
on. Bye, everybody.
take
Good night.
care.